Hello students, welcome to the MEMONEET. Myself Ritik, your biology SME. So yeah, in the last video we have actually discussed about the human reproductive system, or specifying them like the male reproductive system as well as the female reproductive system. So those who are very new to this channel, make sure that you attend or listen the previous video lecture. Then only you'll be able to understand today's whatever the video that whatever the class that I'm going to take you. Okay. So, and another thing is, if you are very new to this MEMONEET, so you have to know that our MEMONEET, we have the NTA PYQ book, NTA PYQ book. So this book normally consists of all the previous year question papers. Everything has been segregated based on the chapters, based on the topic and weightage, everything. So you'll get a detailed blueprint of the NTA syllabus, everything. So which are deleted have been removed, and recently added syllabus have been considered, and they have also been added to the book. So this is one point, and we also have the Brahmastra test series are going on right now. Based on the Brahmastra test series panel itself, these chapters are being scheduled. The whatever the biology chapters or chemistry, physics, wala jo chapters hai, we are doing based on the Brahmastra test series schedule itself. So what is this Brahmastra test series? It is actually a kind of test series that has been happening by the MEMONEET. So simultaneously in this test series, you will cover both 11th as well as 12th chapters, topics and all. And this will help you in a thorough revision, okay, for your NEET 2025. So without delaying much time, let us move on to the major topic. Yes. So our next topic is the gametogenesis. So in the gametogenesis, so what do you mean by gametogenesis? First thing is, so when I'm talking about the primary sex organs, that is in the male, it is testis in the male, and ovaries in the females. So they normally produce gametes, right? So gametes, that is one is sperm as well as ovum, respectively. So this production of the sperm and ovum together collectively, it is actually called as gametogenesis. Clear? So in testis, what happens? The matured male germ cells, that is, yesterday we were talking, that is, what are the germ cells here? Matured male, oh sorry, immature male germ cells are nothing but spermatogonia, right? So that spermatogonia, it normally produces what? Sperms by the process called as spermatogenesis, right? So that spermatogenesis, it is actually brought about during the puberty. Puberty is nothing but when we reach to our adolescence age, that is 18 plus, something like that, or 16 plus basically. So when a person normally hits the puberty, then this gradual spermatogenesis process starts taking place, like that maturation of the sperm takes place. Okay. And the spermatogonia, when I'm talking about the spermatogonia, we are actually collectively we are denoting them. So if they are single, then we normally call them as spermatogonium. Okay. So anyhow, so they are normally present inside the walls of the seminiferous tubules according to the diagram, right? So what happens is these seminiferous tubules, and later on they normally multiply. I'm just talking about the previous one when I was explaining the what are germ cells and all, when I explained in the male reproductive system. So that's what I'm describing you, right? So here what happens is these spermatogonia, they are normally present in the walls of the seminiferous tubules, right? And multiply by what? Mitotic division, and increase in the number. And each spermatogonia or spermatogonium, if I'm talking about individual spermatogonia, so that is each spermatogonium is actually diploid in state. Each spermatogonium will be diploid in state. Okay, so they will be diploid and and contains 46 chromosomes. Okay, so diploid and contains how much? 46 number of chromosomes. Okay, some of the spermatogonia they are also called as, and this spermatogonia, right? It is also called as what? Primary spermatocyte. So you can see here, okay, spermatogonium. If you are denoting single, it is actually called as what? Spermatogonium. So the spermatogonium will what happens? It is going to multiply mitotic division. It is undergoes the mitotic division and increases in its number. It consists of 46 number of chromosomes and it is diploid in condition. Okay. And each spermatogonium is also called as what? Primary spermatocyte. So here you have. So now after this primary spermatocytes, okay, they periodically now they undergo the meiosis. Okay, periodically undergoes meiosis. Meiosis matlab what? What do you mean by meiosis? Wherever the meiosis happens, what kind of division will be you will be able to see? Reduction. So you need to know these terms, okay? Reduction, division normally happens in the meiosis, whereas in mitosis, it's not reduction division. Rather than what happens, it normally in the mitosis when happens, it leads to the increase in the number. Okay. So first step is it undergoes the meiosis and next it undergoes mitosis. First thing, so that it can, gradually increase its cells number. Then it undergoes meiosis. So from 46 number of chromosomes, it gets reduced to form how much? 23 chromosomes. Okay, so 26 chromosomes. That is, it leads to after reduction, you will get a 23 number of chromosomes. So it was diploid when it was 46 chromosomes. Okay, so when it becomes 23 number of chromosomes, obviously it is going to become haploid. Okay, it is going to become haploid cells. And now these cells are actually called as secondary spermatocytes. Okay, so these cells, that is the haploid cells, because of the reduction, it is called as secondary spermatocytes. I hope this is clear to you. Cool. So after those secondary spermatocytes, what happened? We have now 23 chromosomes each. I mean, in each individual, okay, spermatocytes, you will actually see they will be having 23 chromosomes only. Okay, so after this secondary spermatocytes, right? They again undergo the second meiotic division, okay, to produce four equal haploid spermatides. Now what happens? These secondary spermatoids, again it undergoes the meiotic division to form to form what? Four equal haploid haploid spermatid spermatids. So you can see here the spermatids, right? So they are spermatids. So now this secondary spermatocytes will undergo again the meiotic division to form four equal haploid spermatid. Okay, so this is clear to you. So what would be the number of the chromosomes here? I told you equal division hua hai. Okay, that means equal division has happened. So that means each spermatid will also be having how much? 23 chromosomes itself. So this question was also been asked once in your NEET exam. So it is actually a direct based but logical question. Okay. Matlab, basically what happens, I told after the mitosis, meiosis occurred, and meiosis matlab reduction division. From the mitosis to the meiosis, when it is coming, it will also always be an reduction itself. But when I'm talking about when it is the secondary spermatocytes is undergoing again a meiosis, and it is producing, the statement itself is saying that it is producing four equal haploid spermatids. Haploid matlab yan. So what do you mean by diploid then? 2n, 2n, right? So that is nothing but 2 into 23. So when it is, I'm talking about the haploid, only 23 chromosome is there. Equal haploid spermatids are produced. That means all the four spermatids, right, will be having equal chromosomes. That is 23 chromosomes itself. So this is clear to you? Yes. So now what happens is, so once this is formed, the spermatids are then transformed into, now the spermatids gets transformed into spermatozoa. Okay, so now what happens? This spermatids are going to transfer into what? Spermatozoa. Or you can also call them as sperms. So this is the gamete, male gamete sperm has been produced now. Okay. So this entire process is actually called as what? The entire process is actually called as sperma, this process, by the process, I mean, how it is going to happen? This spermatid is going to transfer into spermatozoa, and this process is called as spermiogenesis. Okay, so that is spermiogenesis is nothing but the spermatid is going to transfer into the spermatozoa. So this process is called as what? Spermiogenesis. I hope you're clear with the spermiogenesis process. An entire process, that is after the spermiogenesis happens, so you will be able to absorb the sperm head, then you will also able to absorb the neck region, tail region, everything you will be able to absorb. Okay. Then you will also see this at the region has been embedded. Where it has been present, it is actually present in the Sertolic cell. Okay. And then they normally, finally, it is going to release into the this thing. That is, finally, it is going to release to the seminiferous tubules by the process called as spermiation. Okay. So what happens now? This whatever the sperm that you are seeing, it will be present in first. It will be embedded. That means it will be located in where? Yeah, Sertolic cells. So what is the function of Sertolic cells? It's normally gives the nourishments and all, right? So later on, what happens? They will move to the, finally it will be released to the seminiferous tubules. So what happens is by the process called as spermiation. Okay, this is all about the spermatogenesis. So this is one diagrammatical representation. If you want, you can also, go through this flow chart also. Same thing has been explained here. So normally what happens during the puberty, obviously you will be seeing the spermatogonium here. So the spermatogonium undergoes the mitotic division, and finally, after undergoing the mitotic division, that is increasing in the cell, so you will see the primary spermatocytes. So these primary spermatocytes will be in what kind of position? It will be haploid or it will be in diploid. Yeah. So whether the question, see, as I have already explained you, the spermatogonia say it undergo the mitotic differentiation. So after mitotic differentiation, mitotic differentiation, the primary spermatocyte will be in what condition? Whether it will be in the haploid or diploid condition. Yeah, say it fast. I mean, just think of it. It will be in the diploid condition. That's what I'm saying. You do not get confused. Okay. When I'm talking about the dip, means you can just imagine like this dip 2. Okay. So diploid condition, that is 46 number of chromosomes will be present, not the haploid. So, diploid condition. So, later on, it undergoes the meiotic division or it undergoes what? Meiosis, that is reduction division. And now we will see the haploid condition. Okay, that is reduction of the chromosome numbers also. So how many chromosomes you will be able to see? 23 number of chromosomes you will be see. So this primary spermatocytes will undergo to form the secondary spermatocytes. Again, the secondary spermatocytes, which is haploid in condition, will again undergo the what kind of division? Meiosis or meiotic division to form four equal. You can see here, right? So to form what? Two or four equal. So you can see the four equal spermatids. Okay. So these four equal spermatids. So that's spermatids. Now, why I am using the word transformation? So here you can see it is somewhat round in structure, right? So immediately it got transferred into the sperm-like structure. So that means it undergoes differentiation, okay, to form what? Spermatozoa. It has underwent the differentiation to form spermatozoa through a process called as spermiogenesis. Okay, so by the process called as spermiogenesis. So this is all about what? So that is all about the formation of the male gamete. Okay, so that is especially about the spermatogenesis. So after this spermiogenesis starts at the age of the puberty. During once you reach to the puberty or you hit to the puberty, this spermiogenesis normally takes place. So why actually it happens only after hitting to the puberty, that we are going to see. Okay. So one thing might be because after the puberty itself, once we hit the puberty age, right? So what are the things we will be seeing? A significant increase in so there will be an increase in some of the hormones. So what are the hormones? Significance increase in the, secretion of gonadotropin releasing hormone. Okay, so significant increase. So one thing what will be more in our body during the puberty is gonadotropin releasing hormone. So where it has been released, if you recall properly, it is actually, this gonadotropin releasing hormone is been secreted by the hypothalamic hormone. Anyhow, so the increased level of this gonadotropin releasing hormone, yeah. So increased level of this GnRH hormone, okay, that acts. This is going to act on your pure this thing. That is the pineal gland. Sorry, it normally acts on the pituitary gland. So it normally acts on the uh, pituitary gland. and it is going to stimulate secretion of two gonadotropins. So pituitary, it normally acts on the pituitary gland and will force the pituitary gland to secrete another two gonadotropins. One is LH, that is nothing but luteinizing hormone, and the another one will be FSH, that is follicle stimulating hormone. Okay, so these are the two hormones which are being released by this pituitary gland now. So what are the functions of these LH hormone and FSH hormone? So this LH hormone, and it normally acts on the, yes, this LH hormones, it acts on the this thing, Leydig cells. Okay, so Leydig cells, and later on it is going to help in the synthesis stimulation as well as the synthesis and secretion of the androgens. It acts on the Leydig hormones and it stimulates the synthesis and secretion of androgens. So what is the function? Why androgen secretion is very important? Androgens, in turn, it is going to in turn, it is going to stimulate the process of spermatogenesis. Okay, so this is all about the LH hormone. So next thing is FSH hormone. So coming to the FSH hormone, so here in FSH hormone, what you'll actually see is, yeah, in FSH hormone, it acts on the Sertoli cells. So Sertoli cells, and in Sertoli cells, it is going to stimulate and secretion of some of the factors which normally, okay, which normally helps in the production or the process of the factors, helps in the process of the spermatogenesis. So I hope this is clear now. Yes. So first thing what happens when I'm this is another very important thing. So you need to concentrate what kind of hormones are produced in during the puberty, which is going to help for the spermatogenesis process. So what happens is once you hit the puberty, there will be an increasing in the level of the secretion, that is actually gonadotropic releasing hormone. So this gonadotropic releasing hormone is actually been that been released by the hypothalamic hormone, which is actually present in hypothalamus. So this gonadotropic releasing hormones, it is going to act on this pituitary gland, and it is going to stimulate the pituitary gland to release another two hormones, secrete the another two hormones, that is LH hormone and FSH hormone. LH means luteinizing hormones as well as FSH means follicle stimulating hormone. So this LH hormone, it is going to act on the Leydig cells. So once it acts on the Leydig cell, it is going to stimulate the Leydig cells for the synthesis as well as secretion of the androgens. Okay. So once the androgens have been synthesized, these androgens again they are going to stimulate the process of the spermatogenesis. Matlab, it is going to say that okay, now you start carrying the spermatogenesis process, like that. So coming to the FSH hormone, so it is going to act on the Sertolic cells. So वहाँ पर Sertolic cells का क्या होता है? Like it is going to act, it is going to help in the stimulate and secretion of some of the factors which are helpful to undergo the spermatogenesis. So this is all about what thing? About the spermatogenesis and hormones which are very much important in the process of spermatogenesis. Now let us know about this spermatogenesis process to hua, and we as an end product we have also got our that is male gametes, that is the sperm, right? So now we need to understand the structure of the sperm and how the sperms are. So here it is. So when I'm talking about the structure of the sperm. So when you examine a sperm under the microscope, this is how the structure of the sperm you will feel. So one thing you will find is the head part, the neck part, and the middle piece as well as tail. This is a common thing. Okay. So if you consider, if you go even deeper to check how the structure is, you will also find a plasma membrane. Okay. You will also find a plasma membrane. You'll also find the plasma membrane which has been surrounded around the body. So plasma membrane, matlab, you know what is the plasma membrane, right? It is actually a lipid bilayer. So it is not vulnerable to any of, so it doesn't allows any of the substance or whatever the materials to pass through the body and vice versa. So anyhow, they normally acts as a cover protector anyhow. So this plasma membrane, the entire body has been covered by the plasma membrane. This is one thing. And also you will see the sperm head region. वहाँ पर एक envelope है. Okay. So envelope is present, and you will also see an haploid nucleus is also present. Okay. This is haploid nucleus also present, and this nucleus contains what? Chromosomal material, and this nucleus is going to contain what? Chromosomal material. So to the anterior part you can also see there is acrosomes are present. On the anterior part what you are seeing here, acrosomes are present. So these acrosomes, you know, they are being filled with enzymes, certain enzymes. Okay, so these enzymes, it is going to help in the fertilization of the egg. Matlab, if this is an egg ovum, so once the sperm head reaches here, right? Just imagine. So here there will be an acrosome. So once it reaches the acrosomes, the head is going to rupture, and the acrosome is going to release those enzymes. And these enzymes will help the penetration of this whatever the nuclear, that is the chromosomal material, the nucleus, right? So it gets to penetrate, it gets to come inside this ovum, so that fertilization happens. So therefore, this acrosomes plays a very important role. So this is all about the acrosomes. So now we also have the middle piece. So after this all thing, what you are seeing, the middle piece. You have also seen neck. Middle piece mein kya hai? What is there in the middle piece? You have mitochondria. Okay. So mitochondria, we actually know that they're the powerhouse of whatever. Like if you are considering a cell, it is a powerhouse of a cell. So here, what is the role of mitochondria? Is mitochondria normally gives a power in such a way that they can swim. Okay, so energy source for swimming. So once it reaches to the female body, it has to reach to this ovum, right? That the female gamete. So for that, it has to across a very long, it has to travel a very long journey. So for that, for swimming purpose, the mitochondria is present, and the mitochondria is responsible for the swimming. That means giving energy while swimming. So again, what happens is mitochondria size or the numbers might get varied from one sperm to the another sperm. So this length will not be the same in all the sperms. Okay, the number of the mitochondria would be varied from one cell, from one sperm to the another sperm. And this is the elongated part is actually called as tail region. So at one ejaculation, normally around 200 to 300 millions of sperms are released at one ejaculation. Okay, so at very one ejaculation you will actually see like 2 to 300 millions of sperms has been released. Okay, so that is what normally happens in a normal person. and at least 60% of sperm must have, and when you cross examine them in a microscope or some medical thing and all, around 60% should have, sperm should have a normal body structure, that is proper head, proper mitochondrial structure, proper tail structure, and 40% of must show the vigorous mortality, and around this 20%, again 40% of them should actually show vigorous mortality. That means a very quick, very strong mortality. मतलब 100% में चलो 100 का 100% will not be the healthy sperms, but in a normal healthy human beings at least they should have a 60% of healthy sperms जिनका size structure पूरा सही हो. Okay, and in that 40% of the sperm should show a vigorous mortality. मतलब it should be unable to move very faster. So these things are considered when we are supposed to say them it is a healthy sperm, if a person is having a healthy sperm count and all. Okay, so the sperm normally released from the seminiferous tubules and they are being transferred to the accessory duct. Then secretions of the epidermis, vasa deferens. You know this all structure which I have explained in the previous video, right? So later on, it is going to reach to the penis region. Then we will have, this is how normally happens. So how through the how it is going to reach through the masturbation process, and from there itself the sperms comes out. Okay, through the semen. So how the sperms are consisting? Sperms are like they are constituents with the, we have, yes, what all the things we have? The seminal plasma, along with the sperms, we call them as the semen. Okay. The function of the male sex accessory duct and the gland are maintained by the testicular hormones. That is actually what I have explained you in the previous. That is the androgen. So this everything is being maintained by the androgens itself. So this is all about the sperm production as well as the structure of the sperm. So any doubt on this part? Anywhere, do you feel any doubt in this part? If not, I'll move to the next, that is the formation of the oogenesis. Fine, right? Cool. I guess now we are very clear with the spermatogenesis process. The next thing is the gamete formation that you see in the female. So that is the gametogenesis formation that you are specifically we are concentrating on the female gametes formation, that is oogenesis. Okay. So how this oogenesis process normally takes place? So oogenesis is again a gamete formation, right, in the female. So how this process normally takes place? See, first, what happens is the process of formation of the matured female gamete that is actually called as oogenesis. So, which has been marked differently when we compare to the spermatogenesis. Here, the process is completely different. So, oogenesis is actually initiated during the embryonic development itself. That means spermatogenesis normally happens when a particular person hits the puberty. But this oogenesis is being initiated during the embryonic development stage. Okay, embryonic developmental stage, when the when the couple of the million gametes, that is mother cells, that is oogonia, are formed. Millions of oogonia are formed during the embryonic itself. Okay, within the each fetal organ. This is again very important and might ask in the NEET, or they have asked sometimes. That is normally what happens. This is during the developmental stage where the couple of million, okay, gametes or gamete mother cells. MC is nothing but mother cells. That is what we normally called as oogonia. Okay, are formed in each fetal ovary. Fetal is nothing but the mother or the female ovary. So you will see million gametes of the mother cells basically. So this is one point, and no more oogonia are formed, or added after the birth. So this is very important and key points. You are getting what I'm saying. So during the embryonic development itself, there you will see a million of gametes, mother cells are already there in the oogonia. Okay, and after the birth of the baby, you won't see any additional development or add of this oogonia. Okay, then these cells they starts dividing and enter into the these cells will start dividing and enter into the prophase, prophase 1. How it are divide through mitotic, mitotic division, and get temporarily they will be in a arrest stage in sense inactive stage kind of thing. Okay, so they are actually called as primary follicle. So what happens is, so first thing what they do is each the cells they get divided into whatever the cells you are seeing, they gets divided into the undergoes the meiotic division and they reaches to the arrest stage and it is actually called as primary follicle. So this is one thing. And each primary follicle they get being surrounded by a large number of granule the see this cells what I'm undermarking, right? So the green wala that I'm saying you, those are actually what? Those are actually called as granulosa cells. Okay, so those are actually called as granulosa cells. And these granulosa cells, okay, so this whatever the cells they undergo the meiotic division and reaches to the arrest stage is actually called as, and they are being surrounded by the granulosa cells. They are called as what? Primary follicle. Okay, so this is one point. Then the large number of these follicles, that is these follicles, they get degenerated, okay, during the phase, like they get degenerated during the birth to the puberty. Once they hit the puberty, they start getting degenerated. Therefore, okay, so the puberty only around, so during the puberty, what happens? Puberty, what happens? Only 60,000 to 80,000 of primary follicles are left in each ovary. Okay, so ovary is present in the female. So what happens in each ovary? That is, we have actually discussed about pair of ovary are present. So in each ovary, you will actually see either 60,000 to 80,000 of primary follicles are left in the each ovary. So this is another very important point. Okay. So these primary follicles, as I told, they are going to get surrounded by the more layer of these granulosa cells. Okay. And even nucleus. Then at the end, what happen? They start forming what? secondary. Okay, here you can see this thing. So it starts forming what? The secondary follicles. Okay, primary follicles to secondary follicle. Now, soon the secondary follicle will then get transferred into this tertiary follicle. Okay, so this tertiary follicle, now you can actually see a fluid which is filled inside. Can you see the fluid which is filled inside here? So this fluid filled cavity is actually called as antrum. Okay. Then what happens? The theca layer, this layer, okay, is organized into inner theca and outer theca. That is basically you'll see two types. One is innerly leaned layer. They're actually called as inner theca intrana, and the outer layer is actually called as outer theca externa. Okay, so it is very important point. Again, what happens? They undergo the primary oocyte formation will happen. So now the Graafian follicle development you will see. So once the Graafian follicle development happens, it will leads to the primary oocyte. Okay, then primary oocyte to the secondary oocyte, and finally primary oocyte is like unequal division. Okay, so from here to what happens, this complex size will undergo this complex size. Okay, this complex size will undergo the first meiotic division, and it is what it is again, it is unequal division takes place in the form of large haploid secondary oocyte. Okay, so primary oocyte say it will go to the secondary oocyte. For example, here you can see. So what happens? The oogonia, it undergoes what? Yes, it undergoes the meiotic division. So after meiotic division, they undergoes primary oocyte formation. So once the primary oocyte are being formed, right? So what happens? Once the primary oocyte has been formed, it undergoes the meiotic division, which is not irregular division. I mean, it is not an equal division will take place. Then once it reaches to the first meiotic division happens, it is actually an unequal division. Okay, so you can see here, I guess where it is. Yeah, so you can see here, right? So once meiotic division matlab unequal division. So once they got divided into two egg, so two body, you have seen there is an unequal size. Okay, so therefore it is actually called as unequal division. So once this unequal division happens, so later on one of the egg will actually become the secondary oocyte, where the other becomes the polar body. So polar body is no more, it is, it can get fertile anyhow. So the tiny egg that you find will actually becomes what? The polar body. And the another one you will see, right? It becomes secondary oocyte, which is haploid in nature. Okay. Then what happens? This secondary oocyte retain again a kind of bulk of the nutrient. That means it will gather all the nutrients rich cytoplasm of the primary oocyte. Then as a result, it becomes an advantageous to again undergo a kind of division to form the secondary polar body out of the first meiotic division. And another one is the formation of the ovum. This secondary polar body will further gets degenerated, whereas this ovum, it will be present. So these ovum, what you are saying, right? At present, we do not like this ovum is now ready for the fertilization process. Okay. So that is actually called as ovum. So anyhow, if the Graafian follicle, so this all process from this process will start from the Graafian follicle. Okay. So after Graafian follicle, you will see the oogonia will actually go to primary oocyte, secondary oocyte, then lastly ovum formation. If the Graafian, this all things happens only when there is some fertilization kind of thing happens. If it has not happened, obviously the Graafian follicle, the tertiary follicle or the Graafian follicle changes into a matured follicle or the Graafian follicle, and the secondary oocyte forms a new membrane which is actually called as zona pellucida membrane, okay, which has been surrounded around it. So these Graafian follicles now ruptures to release the secondary oocyte, what I'm talking about. So once the Graafian follicle has happened, right? So this all process happens. So primary oocyte, everything normally happens inside the Graafian follicle. And once this happens, then there is a formation of the zona pellucida formation, you will see. And finally, it is ready to rupture this Graafian follicle to release the secondary oocyte, that is nothing but ovum. Okay, from the ovum by the process called as ovulation. So this is clear. So how normally happens, everything is clear, right? So this, what I said, this oogonia, primary oocyte, secondary oocyte, this normally happens within the Graafian follicle. So where once the primary oocyte, the tertiary follicle gets matured, it becomes what? Graafian follicle. And once the it happens Graafian follicle, the primary oocyte has been surrounded by the membrane. Okay, the secondary, for the secondary follicle has been surrounded by a new membrane, which is actually called as zona pellucida. Okay, and this helps in the rupture and the rupture of this Graafian follicle and releasing of the secondary oocyte. And the secondary oocyte becomes what? Ovum through the process called as ovulation process. And what about this polar body? It gets degenerated. Okay. So this is all about the oogenesis, formation of oogenesis. So in the gametes, we have actually studied about the spermatogenesis as well as oogenesis. Right. So yeah. Now moving to the very important topic, that is reproductive cycle, especially in the female. So there I've been talking about the reproductive cycle, right, at every turn. So that means what happens if you consider in some animals like the reproductive cycle in the female primates will be like monkey, apes, as well as human beings. You'll see a proper kind of cycle which is actually called as menstrual cycle. Okay. So which is actually called as menstrual cycle. The very first cycle begins at the puberty itself in the female. So that is actually called as menarche. That means very first cycle that normally starts. So in the human female, the menstrual cycle is actually a repeating cycle which interval of about 28 to 29 or 30 days. 29 in your textbook, I guess it's like 28 to 29. But in general, sometimes we normally say right now it has also has become like 30 days also. Okay. Yeah, this is one thing. And the cycle of event normally starts from one menstruation till the next one. It is actually called as this menstrual cycle. That means from day one to the last day, the cycle repeats, right? That cycle starts and ends, right? is actually called as menstrual cycle. Okay. So what about in other animals like dogs and cows and all? You will see the ostrial cycle. So where it is actually a seasonal cycle. It doesn't happens every month. It's not like every month. Okay, it normally happens during the seasonal. So these animals are able to reproduce only at that particular season, like some of the birds and animals. Whereas the menstrual cycle, like primates, high primates, and all, they are having the ability to reproduce. Irrespective of the seasons. Okay. And the cycle normally happens at all the interval. So this is one thing. So during the middle period of this menstrual cycle, the ovum is released. For example, if you see the diagram, obviously here the cycle starts, and at the middle of the cycle, what happens? The ovum will be released. And coming to this diagram, this is actually very important diagram. Okay, so make sure this is very important flowchart. So make sure that you understand it properly, because यहाँ से भी many times maximum number of questions have been asked. So what all the things that you can see here is the menstruation, follicular phase, then luteal phase, and the new cycle beginning. Right. So anyhow, what happens? The major event of the menstrual cycle are these are the major events of the menstrual cycle. So these are the major events of the menstrual cycle. So yes, I'll take some other pen which is not here. I think I'll go with this. So what happens is in the menstrual cycle, the cycle starts at the menstrual phase and flows in the menstrual phase, where the menstrual flow normally occurs in the third 3 to 5 days. Between these 3 to 5 days, the menstrual flow occurs, and that is the starting stage is actually called as menesis. Okay. So what happens is the menstrual flow results in the breakdown of these endometrium. You're getting? So breakdown of this endometrium, that is endometrial leaning of the uterus. The endometrium wall, which is actually lean to the uterus, right? So they gets breakdown, and its blood vessels will also gets breakdown, and which leads to the liquid ooze out. That is, the blood normally comes through the vagina. So at the very initial day, that is starting at third to fifth day, this thing happens. So what normally happens? The menstrual flow results in the menstrual flow results hmm, flow results why results due to the breakdown of just a minute. So results due to the breakdown of endometrial wall, endometrial which has been leaned to the uterus, right? Leaning of the uterus. So that gets break. So obviously the blood vessels which are there also, so that also gets break. And as a result, at the initial very first stage, you will see the blood getting oozed out from the vagina. So this is one thing. So then what happens? The menstruation only occurs once there is a release of this ovum. Okay, once the ovum is released, then only the menstrual cycle will occur. So what happens? The ovum initially will not be fertilized ovum, right? So as a result of this, what happens? For example, the menstruation only occurs if the released ovum is not fertilized. That means if the ovum which is released, if it is not fertilized, then only a complete menstrual cycle will happen. If it got fertilized, you won't see any menstrual cycle. For example, a pregnant woman, the ovum which has been released is fertilized. As a result, the woman is pregnant. So now in the woman, you won't see the menstrual cycle happening because the ovum released is already fertilized, and that will lead to the stop of this menstrual cycle, which I'll be explaining you. Okay. So lack of this menstruation could even sometimes, not only that, the lack of menstruation could be the indication of the pregnancy. If a woman is pregnant, that could also be the indication of the stop of the menstrual cycle could also be the indication of the pregnancy. However, there might be some medical terms also can be considered why this menstrual cycle is not happening, like stress, poor health condition, and all. So these could also be considered why the proper or normal menstrual cycle is not happening. So make sure if the menstrual cycle is not happening proper, so it is better to conceal a doctor. Next up. So the menstrual phase, it normally allows the follicular phase. So during this phase, what happens? You can actually see the primary follicle. So this primary follicle will grow even much bigger to form what? Matured follicle. Okay. Primary follicle to the secondary, tertiary to the matured follicle or Graafian follicle. So now what happens? Then the fully matured Graafian follicle you will get. So as a result of fully matured Graafian follicle, what happens? You will almost you will start seeing the differences, or you'll start seeing the changes that happens during this phases. Okay. So what happens? You will also see the level of hormones fluctuation or hormones changes. For example, ovarian hormones normally. See here what happens. These ovarian hormones level you can see. So the secretion of these gonadotropin hormones. What are gonadotropin hormones now? I have already explained you, or I have already said you in the previous lecture. Gonadotropin hormones, one will be your LH hormone and the another one is FSH hormone. Okay. So these gonadotropin hormones are anyhow going to get somewhat in the fluctuated form. Before this, what happens? There is also change in the ovarian hormone level also. So level of pituitary and ovarian hormones also get changes, and there will be this FSH hormone and LH hormones, right? There will be a gradual increase during the follicular phase. So if this is the follicular phase, now you can actually see they are somewhat in a proper aligned, right? The FSH and LH hormone is properly aligned. But in the follicular phase, you will see there is an increased level of this hormone. And it is going to stimulate the follicular development. Okay. This is going to stimulate what? Follicular development. And as well as it also helps or stimulates in the secretion of estrogen, which is actually provides the growing follicles. But once this LH and FSH, it attains the peak level, okay, peak level of the middle of the cycle. As a result, what happens? Where is the middle of the cycle? 14th day of the menstrual cycle. So you will see a rapid decrease in the curve. So you'll see what? Rapid decrease in the peak level, okay, in the middle of this cycle. Okay. So this leads to the you will actually see this LH and FSH, they have been getting decreased and later on becoming to its normal what do you say, that it comes to its normal way. So at these time, what happens? This matured Graafian follicle, right? So that gets ruptured. The Graafian follicle will get ruptured and only ovary has been released. Okay. Graafian follicle has been ruptured and only the ovum that is ovulation only occurs. That is only ovum has been released or ovulation normally occurs. Then this ovulation, that is ovarian phase, okay, it is being followed by the this phase, that is luteal phase, that is nothing but secretory phase. So what happens in the secretory phase or luteal phase is, so during this phase, the Graafian follicles parts remain as it is, and they get transformed into corpus luteum. Okay, so the Graafian follicle get the part remaining part of the Graafian follicle, they get transferred into corpus luteum. Okay, and these corpus luteum secretes large amount of progesterone as well as estrogen hormone. Now you're getting, so this corpus luteum will start secrete the large amount of progesterone hormones or progesterone, which is actually essential for the maintenance of this endometrium, the entire process. So as a result, such an endometrium, why endometrium? Because it is very important for the implantation process. Okay, so if the fertilization has happened, if the fertilization has happened during the release of this ovum, that is ovulation, so as a result, now this fertilized embryo has to get implanted, right? For that, this progesterone is very important. And this progesterone has been development or secretion of this progesterone has been simulated by the corpus luteum. So this is clear, and this plays a very important role in the pregnancy, that is pregnancy event. During pregnancy, what happens? All the menstrual cycle stops, okay, and you will not see any other menstrual cycle. So in the absence of fertilization, what happens? If the fertilization doesn't happen, now corpus luteum has been, you'll actually see the Graafian follicles, they got converted into corpus luteum. Now corpus luteum is not going to secrete any progesterone in absence of the fertilization. Instead, it starts getting degenerated. Okay, it starts getting degenerated in the absence of fertilization. Then this causes what? Disintegration of the endometrium. That is, now there is no implantation, nothing happens. Okay, so making a new cycle. So now what happens? The cycle clears, gets complete. So you will see this regressing corpus luteum is nothing but the corpus luteum which was formed, right? It is actually getting degenerated, and you will see the completion of the menstrual cycle. And as a result, what happened? Now, once this gets degenerated, again a new menstrual cycle will happen. Okay. And in human beings, the menstrual cycle normally stops at the age around 50 years. Around 50 years, the menstrual cycle normally stops. You can ask why 50 years, and whereas in the female, why, whereas in male, why this spermatogenesis happens throughout their life, and why not in female? As I have already told, the spermatogenesis is a durable process. It happens all over your life. But when it comes to oogenesis, where you will see the mother cells being implanted, which is around 60 to 80,000 in one particular ovum, so during your embryonic development itself, and there will be no addition or deletion of these, after the development or after the birth of the individual. So therefore, only at the age of 50, almost with the menstrual cycle and all, whatever the eggs were there, right, it will be utilized anyhow. So that's why around 50 years, you'll almost see there is a stop of the menstrual cycle. And this is actually being termed as menopause. Okay, this is being termed as what? Menopause. This cyclic menstruation is an indicator of actually a normal reproductive phase and extends between the, so when from where to where it extends between the menarche, that is the initial stage, very first menstrual cycle occurs, to the menopause, that is the last menstrual cycle of the female individual. Okay, and this normally happens from the puberty and hits or stops around 50 years after completion of the 15 years. Sometimes it could be within 50 years, sometimes it could be like 51 years. It depends, but estimated is like around 50 years. This menstrual cycle will stop. So this is all about the menstrual cycle. Okay. So, like to maintain a proper menstrual cycle, proper hygiene, food intake, these all things are very important. So make sure that you be, regularly, if you feel affected, if you feel any doubts or affected, you're not feeling there is an improper menstrual cycle is happening, or you're feeling too much of pain or something, it is better to consult a doctor rather than making it more complicated. Okay. So why we always stress, because the fertilization as well as the very major important, part of the reproduction in the female happens normally during the menstrual period itself. That's why the menstrual cycle is being projected very important from the olden period also. So I just hope you are very much clear about the gametes formation, where how this spermatogenesis happens and what are the hormones which are responsible for this spermatogenesis, then oogenesis, and how this oogenesis normally happens. What about the menstrual cycle and how the menstrual cycle, what are the phases or the cycles of the menstrual cycle? Everything was in detail explained in this video lecture. I hope you have no other doubts, or if you do have any doubts, please feel free to query in the message section, comment section, and do follow our telegram channel and for more questions to practice. Okay, because uh, just blindly reading a theory will not give you everything, right? So for that, even practicing more number of questions is also very important. So that's why I'm saying you, if you want to get even more number of questions, which is relevant to the NCRT textbook, which is relevant to the Neet syllabus pattern, then again I prefer you to go through the MEMONEET app. You will get an allied plan there. So which is for biology, you will have around more than 15,000 questions have been framed line by line, part by part of the NCRT textbook itself. So you can guess like what kind of questions are you going to witness in the NEET NTA, because line to line, if you start solving them as a question itself, right? One thing is revision bhi ho jayega, and you are very perfect with the questions. You are very perfect with the syllabus, chapters, concept, everything, and you know what kind of questions will be asked. Whatever the question has been asked in the exam, you will be very confident enough to solve that. So make sure that you once reach out our memory tab also, and go through what all the futures they have, and if you feel any difficulties or doubts regarding the app also, you can feel free to contact us through the telegram channel, or there is a number also given in the description box. Make sure that you reach out. Okay, all the best, and yeah, just stay tuned for the last video, that is where I'll be discussing about the implantation, fertility, everything.